Hi guys, welcome back to another of my videos. Back to the Old Poachers by John Humphreys. Now, I've neglected one of my favourite poaching birds, the pheasant. So here's a couple of stories I've looked up for you, all about pheasant poaching. One for the pot, it's called. There were many ways by which a man could be indubitably take a few birds for himself and stand a good chance of escaping detection. I've told you this before. Grain soaked in brandy was a favourite. The birds became stupefied by the liquor and could be picked up before they recovered. Raisins on fish hooks were also worth a try, but these were the best used on a springing burrow so that the bird could not get a direct pull on the line and break it. On one occasion, a keeper stood idly watching the shepherd busying himself around his sheepfold. He noticed that the man had a big bag of corn on his back. Nothing odd in that, he says, until he noticed the shepherd set off in the direction of the nearest covert, which was 100 yards or so away. Looking around to make sure he was not observed, the shepherd pulled a plug of straw from the bottom of his bag and walked slowly back, allowing a trickle of corn to leak from the bag onto the ground behind him. Thus he returned to the sheepfold. How flies that, eh? The keeper was about to rush out into indignation and accuse the man, but then reflected that proof was hard to supply, and that the man would certainly deny that he had done any wrong. He waited, he watched, and bided his time until one morning he found a pheasant in a snare in the sheepfold. The shepherd's task was made easier because pheasants often frequent places where there are animals going there for the spilled food. So the shepherd had little trouble in attracting the odd bird to his traps. One for the pot, it was called. Now, all the poachers and farmers called the pheasant long-tails. The pheasant, a foolish, strutting bird, popular with the well-to-do who value its sporting powers and strong flight. Epitome of the gourmet fare on the table, imported from China by the Romans who knew a good thing when they saw it. It has been responsible for more expenditure, sorrow, injury and death than any other bird in the kingdom. The sportsman who fills his woods with pheasants and sets a man to protect them is an object of interest to the poacher, who likes a spot of pheasant on his plate and knows of others who would gladly buy such a bird from him. So over the years he has devised ways, many and artful, to come to terms with it. He risked transportation, or shooting, or prison, and would fight like a tiger to avoid such fates, but surely such a noble bird was well worth the sacrifice. Yeah, the pheasant, a poacher's friend, and food, and income. The pheasant, lovely, splendid bird, imported by the Romans. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love painting my pheasants. Beautiful colours. I got some beautiful film last year of the hen pheasant. Very rare do I get very good footage of hen pheasants, but I'll show you one day. But this pheasant here came along and I filmed him. Lovely, isn't it? I'll be doing more pheasant paintings very soon. Now, let's get another one. That was quite a good one, eh? Shepherd. Snaring pheasants. At every yard interval, the poacher would leave a gap large enough for a pheasant to run through and across it. He would bend a bowed stick with each end stuck into the ground and would hang a snare made of a single strand of wire from the exact centre of each one. Making his way back to the end of the wood, the poacher would beat the covert, walking in a zigzag manner and covering all the ground, driving the running birds before him. If caught in the act, he is an instant man out for a few blackberries or to cut a stick. Search him and there's nothing incriminating on his person. When the pheasants arrive at the newly made fence, they head straight for the openings. Their heads are caught in the nooses and they are soon choked by their struggles. The poacher then comes up, removes the birds, and goes to the other end of the belt and repeats the process. The fence may be left in place for a future visit when a few cunning repairs will quickly have it back in service. This deadly method accounted for a great many birds. Yeah, I bet that still goes on today. Here's another one we'll give you. A ploughboy's trick. James Wentworth Day was one of the great writers about field sports in the fenlands and the countryside generally. In his fine book Sporting Adventure, he explains ingenious ways of taking pheasants. So this was from James Wentworth. It's called A Ploughboy's Trick. I think I prefer the ploughboy trick we had of making a dozen cones of thick brown paper, like ice cream cones, smearing the insides with birdlime, filling the bottoms with maize, and then sticking them into the newly ploughed furrows just outside the covert side. The pheasants were bound to come sneaking out for worms and grubs, and equally bound to stick their beaks into the cones, and then the cones stuck and half a dozen old cocks and hen pheasants would be tumbling wildly about with April Fool caps stuck over their eyes, too blinded and too bewildered to fly. You can, of course, take your pheasants by salting their feeding grounds with maize soaked in gin. They provide a perfect morning after a police court parade. Or choke them with peas through which are threaded horse hairs, but that is a cad's trick. The crude method of shooting them at roost is not to be recommended. In the first place, if the keeper has a sense of humour, he will plaster the trees nearest the rides with wooden dummies. In the second place, the orthodox method of carrying a short-barrelled gun down the leg of one's trousers and trying to look like a wooden-legged soldier has its drawbacks. I know a man who tried it and the gun went off and he has now got a wooden leg. That's a good story. Yeah, probably. These give me a laugh, you know, and it gives me a sense of history. So of these bygone eras of poaching and whatever. And I dare say, as it says, that some of these methods are probably still in practice today, but I don't think it's as profound as what it used to be way back in the 1800s and 1900s. I mean, when you look back then, people went out poaching for, as what that story says, one for the pot. They went out to poach to eat, to survive. And it's just unfortunate if they get caught or whatever, but yeah, lovely stories I've got loads of these books that I'll probably bring out and read to you. There's some stories from them, but this is one of my favourites, and it's handy for the pocket, so I hope you've enjoyed that little trio of stories there. I've been about and I've put seed and bread and crumbs and whatever down for all the little birds and creatures of the forest, so yeah. Now it's time to try a little bit of filming them. So I'm off my up Leafy's Hill, up to my usual spot, my usual filming spot, and see what I can film today. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And I'll catch you in the next one. That was lovely, wasn't it?